Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David Ige.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Longstrugs.
Aloha, happy Wednesday morning. I'm Yanji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei Suji here on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. This is Spotlight Hawaii. We hope you had a great holiday weekend. Thanks so much for joining us here live. Ryan, we have a very popular guest, as always, and someone we always have a lot of questions for this morning.
That's right. We're going to head over to the Hawaii State Capitol, where Governor David Ige joins us now live this morning from his office at the State Capitol. Good morning, Governor. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Yeah, thanks, Yanji and Ryan. It's always a pleasure to be able to join you and take questions and share what's going on.
Well, we know you just got back from Japan, and we definitely want to talk about that, but there's a lot of other topics that we also want to address. We're going to start off with an announcement that you had yesterday, an update on the tax refund. If you can explain a little about some of the highlights of that announcement, and also talk a little bit about some of the delays that may happen for certain individuals that may be getting this payment via a check. But overall, if you can explain more about the announcement yesterday.
Sure. Thanks, Ryan. The good news is for all the residents that you don't have to do anything and you will get the tax refund, whether it's $100 for those who make more than $100,000 as an individual, or $200,000 as a couple, or the $300 if you're below those levels. If you filed your personal income tax, you will get a refund, and it will happen automatically, so you don't have to do anything. We will be seeing those who filed their taxes and are getting a refund and included information for direct deposits. They will be the first to receive the refunds because that's the simplest for us to do. And the first batches of refunds will be occurring and should arrive in their bank accounts on September 12th.
And just to be clear, the folks who are eligible for this, that you definitely need to have filed your taxes. So what's your sort of notice to residents on that to make sure that those who are eligible for this money actually get it?
Yeah, certainly, Yanji, you have to have filed your personal income taxes in order to get the refund. And it doesn't matter whether you paid or whether you got a refund back, you have to file. So for those of you who haven't filed, you have until December 31st to file your income taxes, and you will get a rebate. For those of you who have already filed, then it will automatically happen. If you got a refund through a paper check, then you will get a refund. This refund, $100 or $300 per person, in the same way. And that will take a little longer because we've been having supply chain issues with getting the stock to run checks. But other than that, we do expect that by the end of September, most of those that filed by July 31st will get their refund in some way.
Supply chain woes even hitting the state in the checks department. It's crazy to see just how everyone's being impacted by some of these supply chain issues. Governor, take us back to when you first developed this idea of this refund. This was one of your initiatives that you announced as part of your State of the State. The legislature was able to expand upon that and giving more than what you had initially asked for. If you can talk about just that process of seeing this through to get this accomplished with this legislative body, and what you folks were able to do to increase the amount that initially you had asked for.
Yeah, certainly, Ryan. I really felt that all of us, every individual in the state was impacted by COVID. And I know that there's been various programs, but I felt with especially the economic recovery going ahead of schedule, that everyone should get something back from state government. And I'm glad that the legislature ultimately agreed. And Ryan, what happened really is that the economic recovery occurred much, much faster than anyone had projected. And just to give you an idea, from the beginning of session in January, when I submitted the budget, to the end of session in May, the revenue forecast increased by more than $4 billion. So clearly, the state was collecting more taxes than anyone had ever anticipated. And it was a good thing that allowed the legislature to increase the amount of the refund to $300 per person for those most in need.
One of the things that is driving those increased revenues, of course, is our tourism economy. We are seeing visitors flock to the islands, but one of the missing pieces still is that international sector, particularly Asia and Japan. We know that you recently went to Japan. Tell us a little bit about your trip and when you're hoping to see more visitors from Japan arriving in the islands.
Yeah, thanks, Yanji. Yes, that is the one part of the visitor industry that is lagging. Right now we are still seeing less than 20% of the international travel that occurred pre-pandemic is happening right now, and Japan is really struggling. As you may recall, when we talked in July, the Japanese government was reducing restrictions and trying to increase the number of travelers coming from Japan. And there has been an increase. I know when I speak with hotels in Waikiki, they are seeing more Japanese travelers. But yes, Yanjay, I was there just over last week. And even though they increase leisure travel from Japan to 20,000 per day, they were still restricted to have to be part of a package tour. It had to be an escorted tour. And so the actual number of international travelers going to Japan was less than 10,000 people a day. So starting today, actually, they're reducing the requirements again. Uh, Pre-arrival COVID testing, PCR testing is not required anymore to travel to Japan. And they are in the process of reducing the restrictions for travel. So you don't have to be in an escorted tour in order to be able to travel to Japan. So, we do see, we are hopeful that there'll be a significant increase with these changes.
And just being on the ground there in Japan, what was your sense of the fervor to come back to Hawaii from those you spoke with? I mean, we know that this was such a big market, and to think that they have not been here for going on 3 years now. Do you think that there still is that demand of people that you speak to that want to travel here, or have they found other areas perhaps to visit instead?
No, Ryan, it is clear that the number one destination that people want to travel to, the Japanese residents, is Hawaii. They haven't been able to travel for 3 years now. Many are wanting to travel, but have been concerned about COVID and the restrictions. They've, prior to even in July, they actually had to take a test to leave and then take a test to return. And for the Japanese, that meant it's about $250 per test. So it was a real significant barrier. All of the travel partners in Japan have said that it's really the Japanese government restrictions that is stopping people from traveling. So we do anticipate a significant increase, and that was part of the reason that I went to Japan. It was the 25th anniversary of the Hiroshima, Hawaii sister prefecture arrangement, and even though COVID cases in Hiroshima was at a peak, we were able to travel there safely, and remarkable in Japan to see everyone wearing a mask. People are taking up precautions. In the restaurants, they have barriers between individuals, and they are implementing a lot of the same things that we did here during the height of our COVID pandemic. And certainly in the past, once Japan takes actions to slow the spread of COVID, it falls pretty rapidly. So, I'm excited. There will be a delegation. So there was a delegation of more than 60 people that went to Hiroshima to celebrate the 25th anniversary. We invited them to come, and there will be Governor Yuzaki and a delegation from Hiroshima will be visiting Hawaii in October to celebrate the 25th with us. So we're really looking forward to that.
With COVID top of mind, of course, mitigation is so important. How do you feel we're doing here in Hawaii when it comes to COVID mitigation? And talk to us a little bit about the bivalent vaccine supply. When we spoke to Dr. Libby Char a little while ago, she had said that they had put in an order and that she was hoping to get that sort of into rotation and into the arms of people here in the state as soon as possible. Where are we at with that? And how do you think we're doing when it comes to COVID?
Yeah, Yanji, we are doing significantly better. As you know, the average 7-day average that we announced today is below 200 cases on per day for the first time in 4 or 5 months. We've had in the last 13 weeks, we've had 12 weeks of declining numbers, and the percent positivity has dropped. So we're down back to 6% percent positive. So we're doing very well here in the islands. We do know that there's a lot more antigen testing that's available, and I still recommend to people, as soon as you get any kind of symptoms, you should begin testing with the antigen test, so that the sooner you recognize that you have COVID, the more the therapeutics are successful in helping your recovery. So, I think we're in a great place right now, and it's getting better. As you had mentioned, the new vaccines will become available, and we haven't received them yet, but we hope to be able to get that out to the people. I would definitely recommend to anyone who's already been vaccinated to sign up. It will be different, Yunji, because the Congress didn't appropriate additional monies. And so all of the new vaccines will be distributed through the existing pharmacies and those networks. So people who are interested in getting vaccinated should sign up at CVS, and wherever else they might have gotten their previous vaccines, they will be getting the new vaccine as well.
Just to stay on this topic, we are seeing that decline, but it was also reported today that there were 11 more deaths this week, and deaths are something that we continue to see. Is this at all concerning about just the number of deaths that we continue to see related to COVID-19? And is there any information you think the state is learning from those who are falling to this disease, and what we're learning from those working the hospital treatments, anything that we can gain, knowledge we can gain about those who are still unfortunately dying from COVID-19?
Yeah, Ryan, the reality is that those who are in poor health are definitely more susceptible. And, I do know many more people who have gotten COVID, and because they were vaccinated, their experience was very mild. It definitely was more like having a cold or the flu, and, it was a day or two or 3 days, and they felt like they were recovered, and because they were fully vaccinated. It is still a tragedy, and those who have poor health continue to die from the disease. And that's why it's not something that I think, will ever go away. The notion of an annual shot for COVID is probably something that we'll see in the future. And clearly, we remind people that if you are susceptible, if you're immune compromised, if you are more inclined to have a poor outcome if you get COVID, you need to continue to take all the precautions. Wear your mask, avoid large gatherings. All of those kinds of things still apply for those who are more susceptible.
I'm interested in your own life. We've asked you this in the past. How are you navigating this sort of I wouldn't say post pandemic, but I don't know if we're mid pandemic or phase two pandemic, wherever we are right now. Do you go out to restaurants? When you greet people, are these fist bumps, handshakes, hugs? How do you kind of navigate this? Because I'd imagine that you interact with quite a few people compared to the average person. So how are you managing this?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Yanji. Because I do meet with more people than the average person, we do ask all of those who are coming to the office to meet in person to wear a mask, and I continue to wear a mask indoors. I think that is important for me to protect others as well. I do take tests regularly, antigen tests, because they're available. I test quite frequently, and if I get any kind of symptoms, then I definitely are being more cautious about interactions. So it is about living with COVID, Yunji. It's still a disease that people need to be conscious of. I do think that with the therapeutics and the treatments, it's fewer people have to be afraid of it, but clearly those who have health issues will continue to have to take extreme precaution to avoid getting infected.
I want to circle back on the economy. We know, of course, that you are nearing the end of your term, but you are definitely a numbers guy, like looking at the budget and the numbers overall and keeping track of all of that. Knowing what you know now about what we're learning, DBED released a report last week about the future of Hawaii's economy, it being slightly down than what was initially forecasted, with inflation now being factored in there, talks of just, and fears of a worldwide recession. How do you feel the state is just overall heading into this next year from an economic standpoint? Are you at all concerned about what could potentially be coming down the line? And do you feel that there is enough steps that have been taken to ensure that we are in a good economic state moving forward?
Um, yes, Ryan, I do believe that Hawaii is at a good place right now. The economy is doing very well. Even though we have not seen the pre-pandemic numbers for international travel, and Ryan, you know that the international traveler definitely spends more in Hawaii and has a bigger impact on our economy. So I do expect that we'll begin to see more travelers from Japan. They are projecting to get to pre-pandemic levels early next year. And so even though our economy is doing well, it should do even better as more international travelers come to the islands. That being said, inflation and higher interest rates is going to impact the construction industry, home building, all will be impacted by those inflationary factors. So, we are hopeful that as more international travelers come to the islands, that the impact through inflation and those kinds of things won't be as impactful on our economy here in the islands. We have always, our economy all has always fared better than others during inflationary times, and I do expect that we would fare better than other jurisdictions.
It's September 7th, which was a key deadline for the Navy to submit a new timeline and report on defueling the Red Hill facility. We haven't seen one, but we're curious to know if you have and what you're expecting from that today.
Yes, Yanji, I checked just before getting on, and we have not received the new defueling plan, and that's something that we are waiting for and want to. We made it clear with the Navy that we need to have a plan that has specific details about investments and changes that need to be implemented in order to allow us to safely defuel Red Hill. And we want to be able to defuel as quickly as possible in a safe way. So we are hopeful to get that report with those kinds of details today. The Navy did not indicate that they weren't going to be able to complete that. So we look forward to that report, and then we look forward to working with the Navy to implement the changes and improvements as quickly as possible and begin defueling as quickly as possible.
Another topic has been just what's happening in Washington, D.C. President Biden signing the Inflation Reduction Act. And we spoke to Senator Brian Schatz on this program as well as his thoughts about how that could impact Hawaii. What types of conversations are you having with the congressional delegation on things and ways in which that act and that law may impact Hawaii residents directly?
Ryan, I think the Inflation Reduction Act will help us because the state of Hawaii has been a leader in fighting climate change and in really the energy transformation. So the congressional support and continued support for tax credits for green energy projects, I think we are well positioned, and that should help us accelerate green energy projects. The details of how other kinds of programs would be helpful. We are very interested in seeing more green energy projects, especially firm projects. We know that the tax credits are important to the investors looking to make investments in Hawaii. And some of the other actions in the process to help solar manufacturers, I think in the long haul helps us tremendously. And they were smart enough not to shut down imports of solar panels right now because the U.S. just doesn't have the capacity to accelerate the projects that we want. So, Ryan, I think on all fronts, because Hawaii has been at the forefront of this energy transformation, there will be grant opportunities and other investment incentives that will help us, I think, in the long run.
Before we let you go, I want to ask you about something that made Hawaii as a state so proud, and that, of course, is our Little League team bringing home such an amazing victory. Can you tell us a little bit about how the state is hoping to celebrate the champions?
Yes, Yanji, thanks. I was able to call from Japan over to Coach Gerald Oda, and I had a conversation with the team members shortly after they had won the world champion. They had gone out to celebrate, and then they reconvened at the hotel. And they were so exhausted, but so excited. So, we've been working with Mayor Blangiardi, and we are coordinating to have the mayor be able to receive them and provide them a proclamation. I'll be doing the same at Washington Place and providing some refreshments. And then we are planning for a parade tomorrow for the general public to be able to acknowledge the players. It is such a terrific story, and I am always amazed with the coaching staff and volunteers that support these players. They really do emphasize all of the right priorities for the athletes. They're great athletes. It's obvious that they are the best in the world at baseball at 12 years old. But they really do exude the aloha spirit and the whole notion of team before individual. And it was great to see different players excel at different points in the tournament. It was great to see how humble they were in victory and being respectful of the other team. And it's really great to see the players helping each other and being supportive, even when someone doesn't perform as optimally as they all want to try and do. So it's a great celebration for the state of Hawaii, and it's amazing that the Little League Baseball in Hawaii is just so supportive of our young people, that we have quality coaches that are willing to volunteer and invest the time in our young people. And I think most importantly, that they focus on the right things about teamwork, about not the individual star, but being able to accomplish something together, which I think is so core value here in the islands, about community oftentimes being more important than individual rights, which just is so relevant today in today's world, where everybody else around the country is focused on wanting to exert their individual needs over the community. This Honolulu Little League team is just really the right values at the right time for our community.
It sounds like a campaign slogan right there. You just summed it up for them if ever, any of them want to run for office. Before we let you, of course, this is 3 more months in office. We always like to end with just a fun question, reflecting back on your time as governor. I want to ask you before we let you go. You've met a lot of people during the last 8 years. Has there been any one person or group of people that you were starstruck about meeting? Anyone that you were nervous maybe prior to meeting? Who do you think was the maybe biggest celebrity or the figure that you met that caused you to be the most starstruck?
I don't know who I would say. I meet a lot of people, and Ryan, you know me, I'm kind of low key all the time. I never get too high or never get too low. I would say at this on this trip to Hiroshima, I was able to throw out the first pitch for the Hiroshima Carps game on Saturday, and I definitely was very nervous about that.
It's a
I
lot
was
of
very
pressure. Yeah.
anxious. Oh, yeah, the stadium had 30,000 people, and our little league team had just won the World Series, and certainly I didn't want to flub up and throw the ball into the dirt or throw it over the catcher. So that was very anxiety filled, and I have to say that I think I did the little league proud in that I threw a strike and it wasn't embarrassing. So I think those are the kinds of moments that create the most anxiety for me.
Oh my
I want to
God.
see the tape.
Yeah.
I was not aware of this pitch. I think that we need your PR team to send out the tape of that. That sounds like a great
Yeah,
moment.
we definitely will do that. It was a fun thing to do.
All right, Governor David Ige, thank you so much for spending your morning with us and updating us on some of the things that are happening here within the state. We always appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, aloha. Thank
Aloha.
you.
Thank you. Good to hear from him. Interesting to hear September 7th, of course, the deadline for the Navy on Red Hill, and he has not yet received that report from the Navy. He is waiting to find out if they will accelerate the timeline that they first laid out, that the Department of Health and his office, along with many state leaders, have said that is unacceptable to them. So they are waiting to see that, and we are waiting for that as well. He talked a lot about COVID and the mitigation measures being taken. The bivalent vaccine has not come to our shores just yet, but he did encourage folks to start signing up through their healthcare providers, noting that the federal government will not be footing the bill for the vaccine as they had in the past.
Yeah, we also got an update and a review of what he announced yesterday with that tax refund and when people can expect to be getting them. There will be a slight delay, as he mentioned yesterday and reiterated today, for those who are not signed up for the direct deposits and get their rebates and refunds, I should say, through a check. Because of a supply chain issue that is causing some delays. So those individuals may see some delays in getting those back. But again, you would need to have made sure that you had filed your taxes for the year. Also got an update from him regarding the state of the economy, saying that he believes Hawaii is in a safe place, that while there are many factors that come into play when it comes to inflation, worries of a global recession, he believes that the state of Hawaii is in a pretty comfortable position where they're at with the resources and the with the money that has been accumulated over the past year, and factoring in the return of potential and anticipated international visitors to Hawaii shores next year, that will help to boost up the tourism industry and thus helping with those tax revenues that will come into the state for the state to be able to continue to providing the support that they do. But noting that it is only a matter of time where things could get impacted, but for the immediate time being in next year, he believes that the state is still well positioned to fare pretty well when it comes to the economy.
Yeah, and so much of that recovery is contingent, he said, on Japan coming back. And to that end, he did just finish a week-long trip to Japan, came back on Saturday. We heard there about that highlight. I do really want to see that video of him throwing out the
We gotta
first
get that.
pitch and throwing a strike, no less. So excited to see that. And also wonderful to hear the plans for the Little League team to be honored by the city and the state tomorrow.
Yeah, looking forward to that celebration. Of course, you heard the governor actually making an international phone call to congratulate the team after they won. But always great catching up with the governor. And again, on that Red Hill report and defueling plan update, we'll see if the Navy holds true to their word and releases that report, which was expected to be released today. But the governor, again, confirming that up until the time of this show on Wednesday morning, he had not yet received it.
On Friday, we're going to be switching gears and talking about the impact of the reversal of Roe v. Wade and abortion access here in the islands. We'll be speaking with OBGYN and a professor at Jabson, Dr. Rennie Soon, along with Cara Jabola Corolis, who's the executive director of the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women. They've recently released a new guide about abortion access here in the state. What has that reversal at the Supreme Court done to the rights of women here in the islands? And how are those certain entities working with the legislature to try to shore up some of those rights in the next session? We'll be discussing that on Friday. So be sure to join us here right back at 10:30 for another edition of Spotlight Hawaii.
We'll see you then. Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.